Since March of 2020, so much has changed. How we work, how we live, the tools we use, the way we collaborate. Hello and welcome to The Bridge. Join host Scott Kinka in a series of discussions of how some of the top leaders in technology bridged their businesses, technology, roadmaps, and lives into their new hybrid work reality. Our hope is that their insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life, from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepointe Technologies, one of the nation's leading IT advisory, procurement, and lifecycle management companies. Now, here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka. In this episode, I speak with Craig Patterson. Craig is the Senior Vice President of Global Channel Sales for Aryaka. Interesting, high energy, great guy, hockey dad, technologist. He runs his own podcast, incidentally, called Dreamers and Doers. He's invited me to be on that podcast, but I've started listening. Really good, so check that out. And joining him on his pod might be fun, Dreamers and Doers. But the fact that he's a pod show host should give you a little bit of perspective on this guy's personality. We'll get back to that in a minute. But in terms of Aryaka, he joined during the pandemic. Yeah, and he said he is the great resignation. I don't want to steal his thunder about why he did it and what he was doing. He talks about that in the pod. But I'm sure you'll find it interesting, maybe even a little bit personal. Maybe you've thought about it. Maybe you were part of the great resignation. Maybe you were swept up in some of the fall of 22 tech layoffs. Just interesting feedback from a serious technologist and somebody who's been very successful in this industry about the decisions he made during the pandemic. In terms of Aryaka, interesting name, right? It means noble or the truthful in Hindi. Aryaka is a global SDWAN provider, winner of Gartner's Voice of the Customer Award multiple times. They generate about 90% of their revenue through partners like Bridgepointe. And I asked him how his business changed, as I ask, frankly, most of my guests during the pandemic. And his answer was interesting and it was immediate. Fundamentally was his answer. The business as an SD-WAN provider, Aryaka was in his work, not mine, in the business of connecting big, shiny buildings. And then everybody went home, right? So they needed to sort of adjust the product. They quickly added a VPN as a service offering, integrated it into the same network fabric. Ultimately, that became a security and application optimization fabric, and really became the trappings of what would become a SASE service for them. And we talked a lot about this sort of conversion, even on the network and data center side, as you've heard from some of our recent guests, around having to change their entire strategy to be around applications during the pandemic. A big selling point for them is that they've optimized something like 3,500 applications for delivery, allowing their customers to decide what's important and what's not in terms of delivering, access down to their end users. They feel very strongly because of that they've got some ownership. Maybe ownership's a strong word. Let's say influence on some of the success that some of the SaaS companies had during the pandemic. His belief, one that I hold as well, is that the pandemic accelerated technology projects that didn't have an impending event, like tearing down traditional WANs in favor of next generation networking or shutting down local data centers and applications in favor of cloud. It's not like there was a lot of question that these applications or these conversions or these digital transformations made sense. It was just that there wasn't a good reason to just start doing it at that moment. And frankly, the pandemic brought that along. Aryaka is betting on businesses leaving people at home in a lot of ways and unifying that experience with the office. Their belief is that 29% of businesses are deploying SASE today, while another 50% will do so in the next 12 to 24 months. I wonder what that means for the future of, former next-gen networking technologies like MPLS. And in fact, that was a fact that he doubled down on in the shameless predictions sections. Again, his words, not mine. Legacy networks are dead. That's a direct quote. I'm sure the Bridge production team is going to have a lot of fun with that quote in post-production. We bantered a bit about how business travel is back. We talked about Oktoberfest. We mopped up with a little bit of Apple Music, 80s hair bands, beer league, hockey, his desire to be the third line center on his hometown Avalanche. Craig's a high energy guy. It was early in the morning for me. It was 2 hours earlier for him. but he's a 5 a.m. hockey dad getting to the rink early in Colorado, so he wins that battle. Let's get to it. My conversation with the very energetic Craig Patterson, SVP of Global Channel Sales for Aryaka. Welcome to the Bridge podcast. You were grabbing coffee right as I was saying welcome to the Bridge, so I'm going to do it again here real quick. Ready? Welcome to the Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Scott Kinka. Today, I am joined by Craig Patterson at Aryaka. He is the Senior Vice President of Global Channel Sales. Do I have that right, Craig? It's a lot of words in that.
Global channels,
Senior
you
Vice
got it,
President
my
of Global
man.
Channel Sales.
That is correct.
I love it. Well, let's just start right there. Craig, tell us a little bit about Craig. Let's go there.
Yeah, no, thanks. First off, thanks for having me on here, Scott. I'm really excited to be on the Bridge. You guys are doing a great job, and I'm a huge fan of Bridgepointe. So very happy to be here this morning. So who is Craig Patterson? I am the Senior Vice President of Global Channels here at Aryaka. What that means is I am responsible for our global channel organization, which happens to represent, north of about 90% of all sales and revenue for our company. So it's really a key role for the company. So we've got channel sales people that, that work out of the various regions. I got people in Germany, got people in Asia Pacific, got people spread all throughout North America, my man. So very exciting role. And recently was promoted into that role about a month or so ago.
Wow. And you joined Aryaka in the middle of the pandemic, something September 21, something along those lines. You were at, where were you before that?
Yeah, man. So I'm one of those guys. In the height of COVID decided to make a change. So I am the great resignation, my man. So prior to Aryaka, I spent 18 years, man. I spent 18 years at, Lumen, CenturyLink, Level 3, where I led a very large channel organization for the company. And it was a great time for me. I mean, I cut my teeth in the channel very early on, was given a leadership role, probably too early, wasn't ready, but I was able to kind of settle in and, continue to develop over the years. And so in the height of COVID, I decided it was time to make a shift. And for me, it was kind of one of those situations where you get up and you look yourself in the mirror every day, especially during COVID, and you're like, what am I doing? And, I had come to the conclusion that I had really become a little bit complacent, Scott, and I just felt like it was time to take on a new challenge. And so, you'll appreciate this. For me, I wanted to transform myself from like being this telco dude, right, into a technologist, which I know, resonates very well with the strategy around Bridgepointe. So for me, it was that I decided I needed to make a shift. And so I started to really think about what was the ideal situation for me. And for me, it was all about finding a company that was high growth, in a market that was, had huge potential. I wanted to get aligned with a company that provided amazing experience for my customers, for my employees, and for my partners, right? Very important for that experience to resonate across all three. And I wanted to get involved with a company that had amazing technology, right? In terms of, a product that really catered to the market, but also a roadmap, right? A roadmap to allow continued success. And so that's really what led me to Aryaka.
Well, let's stay on Aryaka for a moment. You talked about technology. Just give us, we don't need to go totally nerdy, but give us the product pitch. Give us who is Aryaka for those who are listening who aren't familiar.
Yeah, absolutely. So Aryaka has been around since 2009. By the way, you're probably saying, what does Aryaka mean? It means thoughtful. It means noble in Hindu. That's what Aryaka means, in case you were wondering. But Aryaka has really built a business around.
What language? I'm sorry. What language is that?
Hindu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Fire. Go ahead.
Yeah. There you go. You just learned something today, Scott. So Aryaka,
starting my day off great.
There you go. Coffee and learning Hindu. What a way to start your day. So when you think of Aryaka, we've built a business really helping companies, transform themselves around WAN transformation. We really were in the SDWAN space before SDWAN really even became, a known thing, right? In terms of really before it was even categorized by Gartner. But, we're located around the globe. We've got 450 employees, 800 plus customers. The thing that I really love about Aryaka is that experience. So, when I talked about one of the reasons why I joined, it was because of that experience. And you look at us winning Gartner's Voice of the Customer Award for 3 years in a row. I mean, that really validates the experience piece. So, we're all about providing an unrivaled white glove experience. We've got a net promoter score of 65. We're backed by some pretty significant investors, being Goldman Sachs and Third Point investors. We've raised about 184 million. And when you look at our use cases, where is Aryaka being deployed? It's all about that WAN transformation, using our technology to help companies like rip and replace those legacy MPLS networks, helping to enable those hybrid workforce, which obviously was key during the height of COVID, which I think we're going to talk a little bit about today. Really helping companies accelerate their application performance, providing that unified SASE approach, and really helping companies with that those multi-cloud environments. So that's a quick Reader's Digest, my man.
So Craig, we'll come back to Aryaka in a minute. There's a lot to unpack there in that answer that I want to explore, that our listeners are going to be super interested in. But I do ask all of our guests to just take us kind of into the room where it happened. March 2020, for me, it was, St. Patty's week. We were moving offices. We packed up a box. I threw it in the trunk. I never went back. We ended up in a different office, 2 years later. That was my story. What was your story? Tell us how it came down. Were you already working at home? Were you in an office? I know you were at Lumen at the time. Just give us your experience as a worker and a professional, how everything went down.
No, it's an interesting time for sure. It's hard to kind of even think back to that time frame. It feels like it was many, many years ago already. But when I think about that time for me at Lumen, I mean, I had an office environment here in Littleton. I was kind of in a hybrid situation already. I'd go in 2 or 3 days a week, and then the other couple of days I would work from home. So for us, it wasn't a huge transition on the sales side because a lot of the organization was already working from home. But, for me, like you just said, I mean, I kind of packed up my box, went home, and I literally never went back because in the height of COVID, I ended up leaving Lumen. So, but, Lumen handled the transition quite well. I mean, they quickly enabled Teams. I think that accelerated the whole collaboration suite within Lumen. They quickly turned on Teams, and literally overnight, the entire organization started to, leverage those tools. So, that's kind of, the way it went down for me. But I think the interesting part for me was that I decided to quit in the middle of COVID and take on a new challenge here at Aryaka. So when you say you never went back, I mean, I didn't go back ever.
You literally never went back.
Never went back, my man.
No, I understood. And in our industry, I mean, we're just, I'm exhausted. The fall's over, the show season, if you will, but I'm sure you've been on the road quite a bit over the last 2.5 months with all of the, the various events in our industry.
Yeah, it's a very, very busy time.
We're back.
It does feel like we're back. And I think that, the fun part about it is like all these events were crammed into like 2 months. So like all the big events were happening like over the span of a very, very short amount of time. So been out on the road. It's been fun. It's been fun to get back out in front of people. It's been fun to have conversations, sit down, have a nice cold beer and talk to people face to face. So we are absolutely back. The fun thing for me too is, now with this global remit, I've been able to really get out there globally and spend time with people. In fact, I was just in Germany, a couple weeks ago, which was amazing. I had my entire channel organization, meet up in Hamburg, Germany. By the way, not sure if you've ever been there, but it's a beautiful city. And the best part, it was Oktoberfest was going on in Germany. And so it's always good when you get your team together and you get to enjoy some steins together and in that environment. It was great.
So I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time overseas for business, but I have not checked off Oktoberfest off of the list. We I spent very similar story. It wasn't COVID prompted, but I mean, I founded a company called Evolve IP, as you're aware, 15 years ago or so, and recently retired before coming over to join Bridgepointe. But we had an office, they still have an office in the Netherlands, at a big operation there, a couple offices in the Netherlands. So we got over into Germany quite a bit, and It was a lot of fun. But I definitely need to check off Oktoberfest at one of these points. So that's interesting. Aryaka, I mean, you mentioned has a legacy in WAN transformation, and I mean, in no area are businesses more challenged on the WAN side than when they're international businesses.
Yep.
But then everybody went home. I mean, kind of interesting. So, take a minute and just share with us sort of, you mentioned roadmap earlier, what's changed? How did the company morph the product line to adapt to what our new reality is?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting time for us as an organization. We had to quickly pivot, my man, because historically, Aryaka's built this business on really helping companies connect all these big, tall, shiny buildings, right? That's how globally. So that's how we built this business, is really enabling that WAN transformation. So literally overnight, we had to re-pivot our products into more of a hybrid environment. So, what does that mean? Basically, what it means is we built out an entire new product suite focused on enabling those work from home users into like a VPN as a service. So, still helping connect those big, tall, shiny buildings, but also including those remote workers, which obviously during those years in the COVID era, translated to about, 50 to 75% of all the users are sitting at home. So, we enabled that through our VPN as a service, which is interesting because, through that service, we helped all those organizations leverage those key SaaS applications that were the lifeblood of their company, whether it was they were using collaboration suites such as Zoom or Teams or any other SaaS application. We enabled that service to work very, very well for those home users, which I think honestly was a differentiator for Aryaka, really helped us, grow through that time period.
Is that application optimization something that the business sets up in the overall WAN fabric and says, these are the important ones versus these are not? Or is it sort of smart and learning what's being used inside the business? Like, tell us how those prioritizations and rule sets get built.
Yes, I mean, the cool thing about Aryaka is we've optimized into, we provide the ability to optimize into over 3,500 different SaaS applications. And so, with that, we built out a portal called App Assure. And so it's almost a situation where, companies or partners, by the way, and a lot of partners use this as the ability to co-manage their environment for the customers. Yeah. You can log on in real time and optimize and accelerate that traffic into those different key SaaS applications. So, we can do it on your behalf as a customer. We can manage that piece, through the conversations and through the learning process that we have in those engagements, or the customer can do it themselves, or the partner, which I think is the key differentiator for Aryaka, because it allows a lot of these MSPs or technology advisors, Bridgepointe advisors to co-manage those environments. Not only co-management, it gives them the ability to monetize it as well. It could be another potential revenue stream for partners.
Certainly. So let me just read that back for people who potentially aren't familiar on all of the tech. Aryaka operates effectively a physical and logical global network that's optimized to move traffic from point A to point B. And then at the edge, they're either bringing connectivity to you, or you're aggregating access out to those big shiny buildings that, like your reference there, right, to get them onto the network. So they're not buying point to points. They're not buying long MPLS tails. They're basically just getting to Aryaka in the shortest way that they can, wherever you are. And then at the end user side, they're logging into more or less a VPN service that you have that gets them to that same access point. So you're more or less aggregating, local access and VPN connections within a region to your POP, and then how those connections get to both SaaS providers and to the other offices and users on the WAN. Effectively, all that logic is inside your network, and the customer and or the partner is helping them control and optimize that traffic in transport. But you're really out of like the long tail network business and the VPN business if you're a customer, and you're just focusing on getting locations and users to Aryaka, where you're doing the app optimization and edge security and things of that nature. Do I have that right?
You got it, my man. It feels like you work here. So I mean, you said it very, very well. So in terms of Aryaka, I mean, it's really just to kind of simplify it, Scott. We aggregate last mile connections. So that last mile, helping those customers integrate into our middle mile, which is the SD-WAN architecture. So it's last mile, it's SD-WAN architecture. Over the top, we provide that acceleration and optimization into those SaaS applications and kind of the WAN acceleration. And then the new thing about Aryaka, which when you say new, it's like we just launched our first ever SASE product, which is our secure web gateway that just came out a couple weeks ago. And so now when you think about where Aryaka is going, we're heading down this path of this unified approach, unifying security and networking into a single architecture globally. So that's really the value proposition of Aryaka, is now, enabling that to the unification and simplification to occur, in those environments.
It's huge. I mean, it's come up a couple times on the pod in the past couple of months, where we talked about how, when business intelligence was in the office, the security edge was also in the office, and the average business, I think this was a Gartner stat, said that the average business, their remote work strategy was designed for 20% of their employees. And for the most part, the remote access strategy was to get people back to the office largely, right? VPN to the office.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's so funny too, because if you think about SaaS usage, Bridgepointe advisors were out there, and our strategists were out there in the field, and customers were calling them saying, get me more bandwidth. And they were getting more bandwidth to bring end users back to the office, only to send them back out that same connection to their SaaS applications. You know what I mean? So it was great. Hey, we all sold a ton of bandwidth for a couple of months. I think, bandwidth sales between March, April, and May of 2020 went through the roof. But most of it was designed around poor infrastructure, right? It was about getting people to a security edge,
sure.
Or getting people to, to an on-ramp, if you will, when the majority of it is there's probably only one or two applications left inside the building anyway, right? At the end of the day.
Right.
So like super interesting. What's that meant for Aryaka? I mean, has it changed who your customer is? Has it broadened the use case? Has it like what, you had an event that in a lot of ways, and I don't mean to sound callous when I say this, would help a company like you.
1,000%.
How has it changed the company?
Yeah, no, I think it really helped us as a company continue the growth, because, I look at the market and I think COVID really accelerated some of these transformations that were occurring, right? I think, a lot of these CIOs had plans to, unhook some of these legacy networks and to move into more of a SaaS based application and, a unified security and networking environment. But they didn't have any urgency around a lot of those projects until COVID happened, right? And everybody went home and they had no choice but to start accelerating a lot of these projects. And so for us, I think it presented a really unbelievable opportunity for us. Number one, as I mentioned to you before, we created this hybrid environment for companies to leverage Aryaka to do those transformations. But I think the pandemic itself accelerated those situations where companies really were now laser focused on simplifying their environments and moving into these unified approaches, focused around integrating SD-WAN and security. So, for us, we saw a tremendous spike. We saw a tremendous spike in terms of overall pipeline. When you look at our trends, in terms of KPIs around pipeline creation or sales results, our pipeline grew to a factor of almost, 10 to 15 times what we had seen historically, for that very reason. Because, when you look at the value proposition of Aryaka, we're perfectly suited to help those CIOs with those transformations. So our pipeline now and during the time of COVID, reached historic levels. So, I think it's a key indicator of, how the world has changed literally overnight. This is the situation that companies want to be in. They want to have these unified approaches. And so for us, it's actually been a very valuable thing for us.
Before we start our kind of wrap up questions, I just one more on that. You mentioned the CIO a couple of times in that answer. Have you seen your customer change? I mean, in terms of the things that they want, in terms of the things that are important to them, since the pandemic, that CIO or director of IT?
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back to what I said before. I mean, it's that unified approach. We do a lot of research around that. So we have this thing called State of the WAN, where we go out and we talk to customers and say, what's top of mind to you? What are the key trends that customers are focused on, and what are the key features and functionality they want in the market? No surprise, the vast majority of companies today are going through some sort of transformation. What we found is, 29% of all companies today are in the midst of deploying SASE, which goes back to my earlier statement around they want to move towards these unified approaches. And the other 55% of organizations will be deploying in the next 12 to 24 months. So the vast majority, call it 3/4 of the market today, is laser focused on moving to this environment over the next 12 months, right? That's the bottom line. So I think that's what's changed, is it's accelerated all these different strategies into this unified approach.
Got it. Yeah. Out of the wrench turning business and in the strategy business, right? In a lot of ways. I mean, particularly around things like VPN, which are necessary technologies, but just kind of stuff, right? When you're an IT person who's got, other things to do, it's just sort of, those are the also jobs, I call them when I meet with people. And I meet with IT people and, like, what's your job? And they give you the high level. And I'm like, what are the also jobs? And, endpoint security as an example falls into the also category. So totally interesting. And I completely get it. I mean, Satya and Nadala at Tech Summit, right? You and your team were there. I quoted the CEO of Microsoft. He said, we got 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. In March and April of 2020.
Exactly.
And I think what we just lacked was impending events, right? We have heard the same thing, by the way, on the pod from like some of the communications providers that we've talked to.
Yeah.
They've said it's the same thing around Teams as an example. Like it just lacked an impending event. And then we just got slapped with it. Right. And then you're like, all right, well, we're moving. Here we go. Well, I mean, that was super interesting. Let's let you get up on your, let's let you get the crystal ball out. Give us a shameless prediction for the next 18 to 24 months. And it could be in your business. It could just be in the macroeconomic environment. Tell us what's going to happen, Nostradamus. What's happening?
Yeah, no, it's interesting when you look at trends. I mean, obviously, the number one thing is these legacy networks are dead, which I think we all know already. But, when we talk to these customers, we ask them, are they making investments in these legacy networks, or they plan on ripping them out? Half of these companies plan on terminating their entire MPLS network within 12 months or less, right? No surprise there. And then you look at, where they're going from this unified approach. The very interesting thing that I found is through this research is what's important to the customer. They talk about what are the key features and functionalities that matter most as you look at these unified environments. So the question to the customers was, when you start to deploy SASE, what are the most important features and functionality that you can achieve? Do you want to guess what the number one answer? What is the number one feature that companies want from the SASE providers? Any guess?
I'm just going to say edge security for you home users.
That's important, but the number one feature these companies want from their SASE provider, SDWAN. They want to buy their SDWAN from their SASE provider, which tells me everybody wants
one device, make it one
device, one unified approach. And guess what? There's only 4 companies out there today that provide a true unified approach as it relates to SD-WAN and security. Guess what? We're one of them. So, I think that's the key is, we're positioned very, very well to help in that unified approach, as all these CIOs start to head down that path. So shameless prediction.
So reading through that, what you're saying is the next
Yeah.
Yeah. So reading that back in the next 18 to 24 months, what you're saying is the SASE and SD-WAN markets, if they were separate ones before, they're going to be colliding at a hectic pace.
So my prediction, here it is. You ready? My prediction
Yeah.
is Aryaka is going to be the number one SD-WAN and security provider for all the trusted advisors out there, whether it's through Bridgepointe or some of the other TSPs. We will be the number one provider for your trusted advisors out there for that very reason, because we are positioned to help in all those transformations better than anybody.
Well, I like you throwing it down. Nothing like chucking the gauntlet down on the ground. Here we go.
LFG.
Two more. Two more. What's your zombie apocalypse application? You get the world ends and only one app is continuing to work on your phone or on your laptop. What is it and why?
Man, for me, this is an easy decision. I'm a music guy, and I'm a diehard 80s rock hair metal guy. And so for me, it's Apple Music, man. I got to have my Apple Music because I start my mornings out with some 80s rock. I'm teaching my kids all about that era. My kids are now very much, fans of, Metallica and Guns N' Roses. In fact, we listen to a lot of that on the way to the ice rink. So to me, man, it's Apple Music for sure.
Okay. I think I might agree with you on that one. It's the first app that pops up in the morning. Siri suggestions. It's like wakes up in the morning and she goes, should I start your music now? Every morning. All right. I'm going to give you a choice. All right. So you're no longer the SVP of global channels for Aryaka. You get to either be the bass player in your favorite 80s hair band, the supporting actor in your favorite movie, or the third down kind of gadget back on your favorite football team. I'll even give you a fourth option, the fourth line fighting winger on your hockey team. Let's throw that one in there. What's your choice and why?
Yeah. So, I'm always going to lean towards, hockey, especially, me being a season ticket holder for the Avalanche. And, I was lucky enough to be there during the playoff run. And I, got to, almost be there for every single game during the playoffs and the Stanley Cup. So it was an unbelievable experience. So when I look at, these wingers, on the Avalanche and what they had to go through, I would love to be a part of that, whether I'm the fourth line guy or the third line guy or the first line guy. I would just love to be part of that overall experience and seeing all that hard work, man. And you know what it takes to be like a champion in the NHL. Like it takes grit, it takes perseverance, it takes unbelievable focus, right, to become a champion in the NHL. So for me, I'm going to go that fourth line winger, man, all day long, because I want to be part of that unbelievable championship run with the Colorado Avalanche.
I love it. And you know all about hard work in hockey, getting up every morning at 5 a.m. with your kids. You're a hockey dad, yeah?
Oh yeah, we eat, sleep, drink hockey here, my friend. Most mornings we start at the clock starts going off before 5 a.m. We got to get the kids up, get them ready, get them out the door, get them to the rink for practice. That happens pretty much most days throughout the week and the weekends. One thing I didn't share too, man, during the height of COVID, like we had to pivot our home environment to enable the kids to continue their hockey development. So, we built a rink in the backyard. So I'm out there putting a rink in the backyard. We built a, 30 by 50 ice rink. And, that was quite an experience, just caring for that, and having the kids continue to get out there and play in the backyard. But, yeah, man, we love hockey.
Craig, it's been I was just saying it's been a lot of years since my beer league days, but you're making me miss it. I'm ready to get out there on the ice. I'm going to come to your house though and play. It's a little less dramatic than getting chipped by the beer league guy late on a Saturday night. You played last night? Did you tell us earlier?
I played last night. I took a hip check right in the knee, so I'm a little gimpy here this morning, hobbling around. But I'll continue to play as long as I can. My ultimate goal is I want to continue to play until my kid becomes 18, because then we can play on the same beer league team together, although he's way better than me, man. So
That is awesome.
I'll ever get to play with him. And by the way, I think you should plan on coming to Colorado on December 13th, because my beloved Avalanche play the Flyers on December 13th here in Colorado.
That's an interesting offer, and I'll have to give that one a little bit of thought, see if I can squeeze that travel in. But you and I also have something coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm slated to join you on your podcast, Dreamers and Doers. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Dreamers and Doers, it's a really fun time for me, and it's really my opportunity to talk to business leaders about what's happening in channel, where the market's going, what are some of the key trends that we're seeing, really spend some time with a lot of the thought leaders. And so we've had some amazing guests on there with Janet Shines and Kurt Allen and Jay McBain, Evan DeCourt. That episode should be going live here very, very soon. Soon to be you on the show. Really looking forward to it. But that podcast, was happening prior to my arrival here at Aryaka, and then there were some changes, and I was fortunate enough to take that on, and now I'm the host of that going forward. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it.
Super cool. Well, we're looking forward to that. So that's Dreamers and Doers. You can find that on all of the your typical podcast platforms. Apple, Spotify,
yep, you got
etc.
it.
And then Craig, if somebody wants to find you, perfect. And if somebody wants to find you, how best to do that?
Yeah, the best way is LinkedIn. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. Just hit me up, Craig Patterson. Find me on LinkedIn. Connect with me. Love to collaborate with everybody out there.
Fantastic. Well, Craig, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time on the bridge this morning. Looking forward to joining you on Dreamers and Doers in a couple of weeks. This has been Scott Kinka, your host, and Craig Patterson, Senior Vice President of Global Channels for Aryaka. And thank you for joining us on the bridge.
Thanks for having me, my man. I really enjoyed it. Go Avalanche!
Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we are appreciative of Bridgepointe Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepointe, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out Bridgepointe at bridgepointetechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepointe, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also, take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps gives us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I am Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there. In business and in life, do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.